Hello. I feel like I sit in pondering mode right now. I'm doing a lot of research because our charitable trust in New Zealand is going to put together a two-year trial with working midwives. I've been involved in the childbirth conversation since the early 1970s, and even back then I knew that the conversation was broken, but I didn't understand why. It's taken me years to actually put that together. So let me just sort of give you a quick history about this. When I gave birth in 1970, in the United States and Canada, Lamaze and the Bradley Method was taught everywhere. Lamaze was taught in hospitals. Bradley Method tended to be more sort of upmarket kind of. Turns out in New Zealand, where our charitable trust exists now, the Grantley-Dick Reed method, childbirth without fear, was the impetus for developing the childbirth education organization called Parent Center. And so in 1970, in the United States, everybody, there was like a high societal expectation that everybody learn Lamaze or the Bradley method. In New Zealand, that was targeted only to women who wanted a natural birth and pain-free labor with less medical care. And they were developed by wonderful 3 male obstetricians who could see by the 1960s that modern maternity care was standardizing the assessments, the monitoring, and procedures. And they were questioning whether that was really necessary. So they believed, like Lamaze and Bradley, that women who wanted a natural birth, pain-free labor, with less medical care, if they became skilled, then they would achieve those 3 goals: natural birth, pain-free labor, less medical care. And so for a generation, from basically the 50s to the 70s in New Zealand, the United States, and Canada, these skills-based systems were taught for that specific goal. And that's where the first mistake was made. If those obstetricians had just said, all pregnant women have to do this activity of birthing their baby, so all pregnant women should have skills, then we would not be talking about what we're talking about today, because we would have 2 generations of men and women who experience the benefit of being skilled to birth their babies. Now, how do we know that people feel benefited? First of all, we have to stop thinking that the benefit should be to accrue these 3 goals. The benefits are to cope and manage, stay on top of, feel in control while you're birthing your baby, no matter how that happens or where it happens. And that's what the mistake was made in that first period of time, was targeting only those women who wanted a natural birth and less medical care. And from that mistake, and it wasn't intentional, it wasn't like Lamaze and Bradley and Grantley-Dick Reed were against all women. They just didn't think about it. At that time, they were thinking about how medical care was standardized in maternity systems. So they just wanted to try to see what they could do. But that was a mistake, a huge mistake. So what happened was that after a generation, both in the United States, Canada, and New Zealand, with these 3 systems, not enough women had achieved that. Now, interestingly, in 1961, in New Zealand at National Women's Hospital, there was a study done about those skills. And it turned out that in that study, what they said was to the women who had learned skills in the classes was, you will hear other women crying and moaning and screaming. Ignore them while you use your skills. Now, when you hear that in a study done in 1961, you think to yourself, why can we let this concept that skills should only be for certain women, where other women who are moaning, groaning, and screaming don't have the skills? Because if the skills stop the moaning, groaning, and screaming, because women feel more in control and can cope better, shouldn't everybody have the skills? Well, yes, they should. So in the early 70s, I worked with hundreds of families because Lamaze worked for some and it didn't work for many. Why? Because it was targeted to those 3 things: a natural birth, pain-free labor, and less medical care. And the majority of people weren't going to have that kind of a birth. I've been at hundreds and hundreds of births, and I've seen a handful of women have no pain in birth. But a much larger group of women think that they're going to die from the intensity of labor pains. But skills help women cope, particularly when their partner or other has great birth skills. So what happened was that mistake was originally made. And then because not enough women achieved those three goals, the next group of birth advocates in the 70s and 80s said skills don't work, birth is natural, women just need choices. They need to say no to medical care. Well, most women weren't going to say no to medical care. Small percent of women would prefer not to have the standards of assessment and monitoring procedures. But the idea that in a modern society that people are going to do without medical care is going to be the choice that a handful of people make, but not the majority of people make. So the fact is that when that new group said no to skills, yes to choice, the choice was to women to say no to medical care rather than say yes to more medical care. And that's what's happened. Now that we have choices, more women are choosing elective cesareans. And that's important for you to understand. So that was the second mistake, was that the skills should have been targeted to everybody. And when the choices came in, those skills should have come along. And there should have been an evolution of skills as well, so that if choices work, great. If they don't work, you have skills. If you don't have the choices you want, I'm sorry, and you will have skills. If you find that you don't want to make choices because babies don't come to plan, you will have skills. That's my lovely friend Bernie. Say hi. Okay. He's actually the father of my daughter, who was born in 1970, and he was skilled. So we want you to know that skills are really important, and we can heal this break, and we can do it by everybody saying to everybody that you know, learn some skills, and then use the skills to birth your baby. That's the most important thing. So I'll talk to you again tomorrow. See you later.